All right, Kayvon, why don't you close us out with some statistics?
Yeah, actually, one of them I was going to ask Rick and Jonathan about as well. Pace of regulatory change, as you see over there on the right, saying what's going on, why do you have these challenges in compliance and dealing with anti-money laundering, and a lot of responses saying regulatory changes are happening too often. There's too many changes happening. And then the second one is quite interesting, saying there's not enough people, not enough experts to hire to actually deal with you hire.
Yeah, but because
I'm hiring a lot.
Because there's not enough people. That's why you.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Fines have been really high. You know, there was a report recently, Pricewaterhouse looked at the reports and they talked about over a dozen global financial companies, and the number was looking at, well, what is the amount of fines? We're talking about billions of dollars just in the past year and a half alone. Over a dozen global financial companies have been fined as a result of anti-money laundering. And it's not like these companies are sitting idle. Obviously, they're spending a lot of money, and you're seeing this stat that is quite impressive, spending $8 billion just trying to tackle it and having still challenges in finding the right people, catching up and keeping up with regulatory change, and understanding what are the technological requirements. We talked about one example with cryptocurrency as being, okay, what about that? But then as you said, the banks are not embracing it for other reasons. And then ultimately set technologies that we were talking about earlier in terms of saying, okay, if the banks were in fact sharing, or the data, what is the name again? Not conglomerate, it's called
Consortium.
Consortium, yeah. And started sharing the same type of data that they are sharing for fraud detection, for anti-money laundering, then the technologies are available to use machine learning and models of behavior detection to say we can actually see this actor is going bank to bank. There was one example, I don't know if you remember this, making deposits at large number of ATM machines at the same time, same amount of money, and they were trying to basically get away with that. So obviously that kind of a technology would have detected that and flagged it. So this is not a trend that's kind of subsiding. The numbers are on the rise, and it seems like financial companies are still trying to get their hands around and kind of tame the beast. That's kind of what the trends and numbers are showing.
Did you already do this one?
More of the same. Here we're talking about, this is another PwC stat, which I think is very telling from an infographic perspective. It's like, again, this number down here is very interesting to me, that the ability to hire experience is the biggest challenge for them, that they just can't find the right people and can't find the right resources. So I don't know how that can be addressed from a banking perspective. It seems like a very nice whodunit category, so I'd imagine there'd be a lot of people who want to get into that.
I tell my staff, you are part of the Permanent Employment Act of 2017. It is an industry that's growing. I don't necessarily think that's a great thing, because it just means that there's a lot more work, a lot more being asked of financial institutions. We talked about the deputization of the financial services industry. It really is. There was, and I'll circulate it to the attendees. There was recently testimony in Congress about, I want to say it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, about the modernization of the AML regime, the regulatory regime, that talked about really streamlining what's happening. If you can go back to the previous slide. So that pace of regulatory change, the regs haven't really changed. What the pace of regulatory change is the interpretation of the existing regulations by multiple regulatory agencies. And sometimes the same regulatory agency at major financial institutions will give different guidance.
Here's what it means.
And it is very, very disruptive. So the real regimes haven't changed too much, but that's a huge challenge, which was really the point of this testimony in Congress. It was to ensure that we are really tackling, if we're going to tackle money laundering, we should do it for the right reasons and not necessarily to satisfy 5 different regulators that think they know what we need to do for money laundering.